Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday. Made it to the end of yet another work week. And after what happened yesterday with Geno Smith's contract being restructured, making a trade significantly less likely, I want to explore in further detail a concept that I've been discussing and mentioning on and off over the last several weeks, maybe even a couple of months now, and try to really dive into the potential upside here because there's a general sense I get from some parts of this fan base because there are the people who like Geno Smith a lot, and then there are the people who really don't like Geno Smith at all. And then you have this subset in between those two that's more like Geno's okay, but these cap hits have gotten out of control, and we need to find a way to make it so he's not the highest paid or one of the highest paid players on the team, cap hit wise, in 2024. So a lot of those people wanted to trade him because that way we save it a good chunk of that cap hit. We create over 10. We would have created over $10 million in savings if we traded him. Some people before the deadline last week wanted to just go ahead and cut him. These things were being discussed. These things were being floated around because there are some Seahawks fans out there that respect Geno and think he's a pretty good quarterback, but they don't view him being worth that cap hit, and they were just trying to find a way out of it. Now, this restructure does get his cap number, and by the way, shout out to OTC for getting these numbers updated very quickly because as of this recording, Spotrac still hasn't updated their numbers yet. It's 26.4, so it has gone down a little bit. 26.4 might still be the highest cap hit on the team when the season starts. It depends on what we do with some of our expensive players, like a guy like a Tyler Lockett. Like Lockett, I believe, has a slightly higher cap number than this, but he may or may not be on the team. Obviously, we don't expect Adams to be on the team, so it depends on what happens there. But as of right now, even though we saved about $5 million in restructuring, he's still either right at the top or literally at the top. And by the way, Over the Cap was also nice enough to lay out the dead money and cap savings for a trade, because obviously cutting is completely off the table now. Trading Geno Smith pre-June 1st incurs a $27 million cap hit, which means we are spending more money to trade him than we are to just keep him. So if you're trying to save money, the only viable strategy is a post-June 1st trade, which would be very, very irregular, and you'd still be paying more than half of the cap hit anyway. So that's kind of what I mean when I say there's no way we're going to be trading him now after this. I think you could have spun it interestingly before the move we made yesterday, but a move like this, you didn't have to do this. You didn't have to do this if you were going to wait until the combine to weigh offers. You didn't have to do any of that, but we did it now rather than waiting until after the combine. So that tells me that we're feeling pretty good about Geno Smith being the quarterback in 2024. And while I know that in theory this money figure does mean that we could secure significant assets in a trade, I don't think those assets are going to be enough to actually make it worth our time to pay him more money to play for another team. Like, do you think anybody's given up a first and a second for Geno Smith? Is anybody giving up a Russell Wilson or even an Aaron Rodgers type trade package for Geno Smith? I don't think so. But that's what it would take now at this point to be worth my time because, again, it's more money to trade him than to keep him. All right, he's not Percy Harvin. All right. So now that the trade or the cut or what, however people wanted to try to get off of Geno Smith is off the table and we're presumably stuck with this cap hit, I want to explore the possibility of maybe extending Geno Smith. And I've suggested this in videos before, and I've gotten a variety of responses on the idea. But I want to talk about the possibility of dealing with this now before it becomes a potential problem down the line. Because the thing is, when you look at the Ryan Grubb offense that he's likely to bring over to Seattle from Washington, I believe it is an offense that could, emphasis on could, fit Geno Smith extremely well. I think that the offense that he's had over the last several years, both working with Michael Penix and Jake Haener, I think that is an offense that could suit Geno Smith very well. It might even suit him better than it suited Michael Penix. And Michael Penix only finished second in Heisman voting last year. That's not to say he'll be better than Penix because Geno doesn't have the arm talent of Penix. But I do believe it is an offense that suits him extremely well. We also know we have great receivers. We had great receivers last year. That should not change that much this year. Metcalf, Lockett, JSN. Don't know what we're doing at tight end yet. Probably going to bring back Dissly. Might bring in a big ticket guy. Might just bring in a couple of guys. Don't know if tight ends are even going to be a big part of the Ryan Grubb offense. But we also know that we've got Ryan Grubb, former offensive line coach. We've got Scott Huff, maybe the best collegiate offensive line coach in all the country last year. So there's going to be a renewed focus on building up this offensive line, something that Geno has not had outside of maybe the first couple months in 2022 when he was playing at an elite level, by the way. What if he has a monster season? All right? What if he plays better than he played in 2022? That's a real possibility. And don't get me wrong, it's a gamble. You are rolling the dice with this Geno Smith situation. Don't get me wrong. But anything you do in the NFL when you're making some kind of decision is probably a roll of the dice. But the bottom line is, there is a real foundation of the possibility of Geno Smith having an incredible 2024 season. If he can stay healthy, I absolutely think he'll be better than he was in 2023, where he had one of the worst offensive lines in the league. There's no way the offensive line is going to be worse than it was last year. In all likelihood, it will probably be significantly better just by virtue of staying healthy. But the fact that we have guys like Grubb and Huff in the building now tells me that we're going to really go all out trying to build up the offensive line in the offseason via free agency or the draft, and we're probably going to have better players. No more Phil Haynes playing out of position, no more Damian Lewis playing out of position, no more stopgap solutions at center. We're going to try to find really solid, more permanent solutions on this offensive line. So Geno Smith should have something that, outside, like I said, the first couple months of 2022, he has not had this. Because last year, Charles Cross and Abe Lucas went down in game 1, and he never had a competent offensive line at any point that season, really, overall. Like, there were players on that offensive line who played respectably well. When Cross got back, he was good. There were moments of competency from guys like Evan Brown. There were moments of good play from guys like Anthony Bradford. But the body of the work of the offensive line was awful last year. And now you're bringing in these coaches that should be able to turn things around, both by bringing in new talent and helping make the old talent better if that old talent does indeed stick around. So the seeds are being planted for Geno Smith to be a monster in 2024, especially because while I do think the defense will get better because it kind of has to, it's not like we're going to have some elite defense in 2024. It will hopefully be a good defense, an okay defense. So there will be an opportunity for Geno Smith to put up numbers because he's going to have to put up numbers for this team to win. Now, the running game should help offset that a little bit. We should have a really good running game as long as we can block for them because we got great running backs. But I do think that there is a very real possibility here that we need to accept that Geno Smith has some incredibly good 2024 season, and then we go into 2025 in a really tough spot. 1 year left on Geno's deal, almost a $40 million cap hit, which we can get down by extending him. Only what is that going to cost after a big 2024? You probably heard the story by now. This is a couple days old, but we know that Dak Prescott is expected to get a contract worth around $60 million per year in the coming months because the Cowboys are in a really bad position right now where they kind of have to do this. Now, understand that Dak Prescott's situation is unique. For one, Dak Prescott is coming off a season where he played really well. He played at a borderline MVP level. He led the league in touchdown passes, only 9 interceptions, threw for 4,500 yards, won 12 games, and quarterbacked the number 1 offense in the entire NFL, 30 points per game. So Dak Prescott is coming off an incredibly good season. And this comes at the tail end of a 3-year run where the Cowboys have been really successful, and Dak has, for the most part, played extremely well. Last year, he had an interception problem, but I don't necessarily believe he was actually playing terribly. And while I know that right now it's kind of in vogue to make fun of Dak Prescott because of what happened in that playoff game, there's no doubt that Dak Prescott is a top 8 quarterback in this league. So it's not quite equivalent to Geno Smith. Also, he's got the Cowboys in a corner because his current contract has such a massive cap hit that they kind of have to restructure him, meaning he can just say, look, either you pay me what I want or I'm going to go to another team that pays me what I want because I had this incredibly good season. You can't cut me because you'd have to pay me a ton of money anyway. Trading me would be hard because of that contract, but even if you could make it work, I'll do that too if the new team will pay me. Dak Prescott is in a unique situation that we would not necessarily be in with Geno Smith because the dead cap hit to move off of Geno next year is only $13.5 million, so we wouldn't be faced without any option. But the point I'm trying to make here is, at the end of the day, we're talking about a hypothetical scenario where Geno Smith cooks in 2023, makes the Pro Bowl, maybe competes for some All-Pro votes, maybe puts up numbers commensurate or even better than he put up in 2022. So if he's got that same negotiating table to bring, he's not going to get $60 million a year on an extension at that point, but could it be 50? Could be, right? Like, Brock Purdy's going to be up for an extension next year, and I know Purdy's younger, but Purdy's Purdy. Like, what if Purdy gets $55 million a year? What if Purdy gets $60 million a year? What if Trevor Lawrence gets extended for some ridiculous, ungodly amount? The QB contracts are going to keep going like this, and if you can take care of stuff like this a little bit earlier, so you don't have to deal with negotiating against these other monster QB contracts, it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea at all to get out in front of that. So how about an extension now? Geno Smith is coming off a year where he didn't put up monster numbers, where the offense wasn't elite. It was about average. Better than average, but around there. And Geno Smith's play was fine, but it wasn't stand out. It wasn't as good as he was in 2022. So if you tried to extend him now, could you get him to extend for about the same price point as he extended last year? 25 mil a year, maybe 30, maybe some incentives baked in there as well. Could you do that with Geno Smith? Maybe. He's shown a willingness to work with you before. He took less than he probably could have gotten last year on the open market. He took less than what guys like Derek Carr and Daniel Jones got. So he might be willing to work with you. He might be able to say, yeah, put 2 more years on my deal at $25 million a year, and we'll see what happens after 2024. But that would look like one hell of a bargain, one of the best bargains in the league, if he cooks in this Ryan Grubb offense like I kind of suspect he will. So, would you rather pay the $25 million per year now or roll the dice that he either doesn't play so well that you feel committed to him in 2025, or he plays really, really well and then you feel committed to him for maybe double the price? Could it be $50 million? If it's not 50, it's certainly going to be more than 25, and it's probably going to be more than 40. Maybe you land at about 45. That would be still a bargain if he balls out next year, if he kills it, but you could save yourself a lot of headache by just taking care of this extension right now. And obviously people talk about Geno Smith's age. I just want to say one thing here before we get out. Geno Smith is only going to be 33 years old when the season starts in September. He's going to turn 34 about a month into the season. Are we really that worried about him suddenly turning into a pumpkin in the next year? In the next 2 years even? Like, given the fact that this guy didn't play a lot of football for the mid part of his career, he basically had 3 seasons in New York and then he sat out for, 7-8 years. He doesn't have miles on him. Maybe we all have, like, PTSD because Russell Wilson went from this to this, like, instantly, but that's Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson had miles on him. Russell Wilson plays completely different football from Geno Smith. I personally see no reason why Geno Smith can't be this quarterback, the quarterback that he is right now, for the next 3 years minimum, maybe closer to 5. I can't think of any reason why. He's not a quarterback who depends heavily on his athleticism, so I'm not that worried about age at this point. And I'm a big fan of the idea of taking care of the extension now. It gets the current year cap hit down, by the way. And, of course, if it doesn't work out, is bad. But Everything you do is a gamble. Why is this not the gamble you take? See you guys later. Go Hawks.